Hello everyone, welcome back to Relative Security, and today we are going to discuss two more controls. The first one that we are going to discuss is going to be access control management. If you remember, in the last video we discussed about the account management, where we talked about user accounts and the best practices revolving the user accounts in an enterprise. In this one we will be talking about the access control management. The access that is granted to the accounts, user accounts, service accounts, or system accounts, and ensuring that the users only have access to data or assets relevant to their roles with strong authentication for critical data or functions. It advocates for minimal authorization levels, consistent access rights per role, and a robust program for access provision and deprovision. Ideally, it should be centralized. So there are different things that we talked about when we will be discussing the access control management. The first one is the minimum authorization levels, the least privilege, least access to any of the resources. It could be on need basis if the user is in such a role where he needs to access certain servers, certain workstations, he should be given the minimal authorization for those accesses. Otherwise, even if the role or the authority of the user is quite high, maybe he is in the C-level executive, if there is no need for a C-level executive to access certain workstations or servers, the authorization should not be given. The access rights should be consistent to the role of the particular user. And then the program or the process for provisioning and deprovisioning of the access rights should be very robust. So activities such as accessing from untrusted networks or performing administrator functions, these kind of actions pose heightened risks, necessitating the use of multi-factor authentication and privileged access management tools. So addressing overprivileged access, whether due to process immaturity or the role changes, is crucial to mitigate risks. In addition to this, controlling local enterprise assets, controlling administrator privileges on user laptops is essential to prevent malicious activities impacting the enterprise assets. Certain accesses or these kind of accesses should be aligned with the enterprise roles and necessities, encompassing user, administrator, and service accounts. So the first thing that we should be discussing when we talk about the activities involving the access control should be access granting control should be establish an access granting process and revoking processes, where in this process you implement a comprehensive access management framework encompassing both access provisioning and access revoking processes. This framework should include procedures for verifying user identities, assessing access needs based on the roles or responsibilities, and assigning appropriate access privileges. Additionally, develop an automated access revoking process triggered by events such as termination of employment or changes in roles, ensuring immediate removal of access when no longer required. By establishing clear guidelines and automated procedures, organizations can minimize the risk of unauthorized access or data breaches while maintaining effective security measures. The second point is the multi-factor authentication. Implementing multi-factor authentication across all enterprise assets including externally exposed applications, administrative access accounts, and remote network access, should be a top priority because multi-factor authentication adds an extra layer of security by requiring users to provide multiple forms of authentication, reducing the risk of unauthorized access even if one authentication factor is compromised. So, by enforcing multi-factor authentication for these access points, organizations can significantly enhance the security of their systems, protect against unauthorized access attempts, and mitigate the risk of cyber attacks targeting sensitive information and critical systems. When we talk about the access control, the ideal scenario would be if we have the centralized access control. Centralized access control for all enterprise assets through a directory service or a single sign-on provider wherever supported. The centralized access control simplifies the management of access permissions and ensures consistency across different systems and applications. Because by centralizing access control, organizations can improve security, streamline access management processes, and enhance user experience. When it comes to authentication and authorization systems, it is important to maintain a comprehensive inventory of all authentication and authorization systems used within the enterprise because this includes on-site systems as well as those hosted by third-party service providers. Regularly reviewing and updating this inventory ensures that the organizations have visibility into their authentication infrastructure, enabling them to effectively manage access controls and detect any unauthorized access attempts. Last but not the least, we should define and maintain role-based access control as we have discussed before. Role-based access control for data by documenting access rights required for each role within the organization. Regularly review access controls to ensure that privileges are authorized and aligned with employees' job responsibilities. This involves evaluating permissions on enterprise assets and conducting access control reviews periodically, at least annually. Role-based access control helps streamline access management, ensuring that the employees have appropriate access to data needed to perform their duties while minimizing the risk of unauthorized access or data breaches. I hope this clarifies the different activities that you have to keep in mind when we talk about access management control. The next that we are going to discuss is continuous vulnerability management. The main objective in this control is to create a strategy for ongoing assessment and monitoring of vulnerabilities across all enterprise assets within the infrastructure. This plan aims to promptly remediate vulnerabilities, reducing the time frame for potential attacks, and staying vigilant by monitoring both public and private industry sources for the latest threat and vulnerability intelligence. Now, when we talk about the criticality of the controls, we need to understand that cyber defenders, they are in a constant battle with attackers who are seeking vulnerabilities to exploit in their infrastructure. To stay ahead, defenders need timely threat information on software updates, patches, and security advisories, regularly reviewing their environment to identify vulnerabilities. However, attackers often exploit vulnerabilities faster than defenders can remediate them, necessitating prioritization based on the impact and exploit ease. Even with patches, attackers use zero-day exploiting unknown vulnerabilities. Enterprises must accept imperfection, understanding that some vulnerabilities may remain unremediated. Failure to assess and address vulnerabilities increases the likelihood of compromise, with defenders facing challenges in scaling remediation and prioritization actions without acting impacting business operations. Let's talk about different activities that involve vulnerability management. The first and foremost is that we should establish and maintain a documented vulnerability management process for enterprise assets. It should be reviewed and updated annually or when significant enterprise changes occur that could impact the safeguard and maintain a risk-based remediation strategy in the remediation process. And this should be reviewed monthly or as frequent as it can be. When it comes to patch management, performing operating system and application updates on enterprise assets through automated patch management on a monthly or more frequent basis should be a priority as well. Because if your patch management process is not strong, that means you are keeping the doors open for the attackers to exploit those vulnerabilities. And to identify the vulnerabilities in your system, you need to have automated vulnerability scans. You should be doing automated vulnerability scans of your internal enterprise assets on a quarterly or more frequent basis. And bear in mind that these scans should be both authenticated and unauthenticated using different scanning tools. Scanning the vulnerabilities of externally exposed enterprise assets should be done as well, because you can't just protect the internal assets and leave the external assets on its own. And lastly, once you have identified the vulnerabilities, remediation of those vulnerabilities is very important through certain predefined processes and tools that you have acquired or that you can use to ensure that the vulnerabilities are addressed. So in this, we discussed two things. One is the vulnerability management. The other is the access control management. I hope this was helpful to you. And if it is, then don't forget to like and subscribe our video and channel. Thank you so much, because these likes, your comments are very, very helpful for us, and they give us more reason to make new videos. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.